write it down. If you've got a copy of the Constitution, look it up. It's on page 701. There's a diagram pretty well of what's there. It says the Commonwealth quasi-sovereign. It's quasi-sovereign because we, by referendum, are run by our Constitution. Our Constitution has nothing to do with control over us. It's absolute control of the government by the people. It was set up by our forefathers for that exact purpose. It wasn't for the benefit of politicians, even though they like to think they're little gods, they're not. The Commonwealth is the people, as established by the Constitution. The states are the people in the designated areas in on this continent. Now, what they're trying to say is they had the right to set up a local government. Yeah, they did. They say it's not in the Constitution. They lied. It's on page 936, the 8th line down. It gives the states, which are the people, the authority to set up municipal authorities and local governments. Well, what is the local government in the Constitution? It's the state parliaments. They are allowed to make bylaws. Bylaws are laws made by the states pursuant to the authority granted by our Constitution. Now, they've taken it and they've set up a system of local government, which is nothing but a local bunch of fraudsters and liars running a company and a council. You vote the councillors in, they have absolutely no say. And where I come from in Geraldton, they're not even allowed to talk to the people, and there's no more wards, they wipe them out. So how do they represent the people? They don't. They asked for permission to pay them. We said no, the referendum's there. You'll find it amongst that on that list I put out. They tried in 1974 to legalise local government. We said no. 1977, they tried to get permission by referendum for the federal government to pay local government direct. Well, if the people said no, you can't have it, what was that? That was one of their slimy tricks to get you to authorise them to pay an unlawful body, legalising that unlawful body. You don't have to be too bright to work that out. That's two referendums. 1988, they wanted to add 119A to our Constitution. Then they wanted the right, they had 4 questions. To continue, the right to continue local government. We said no. The right to establish local government. We said no. The right to empower local government. We said no. The right to give them authority to pass laws for their local area. We said no. What part don't these idiots know of no means exactly that? No. They need to go back and study the English language, because somehow there's it's a bit wishy, bits are missing. They can't understand that no, it means you can't have it. And then if you go through those referendums, you'll see they tried to knock out the statute of monopolies all different ways, about 9 times, even though we said no. But at the end of the day, when we said yes to this, we said no to the government touching the statute of monopolies. It's 1/3 of the 1688 Bill of Rights. Imperial law in this country under the coronation oath of the Queen. And if you, like me, are a cop, you swore an oath of allegiance to the Queen. I'm not one now. That oath is a covenant to uphold the laws of the Crown, which is Magna Carta, 1688 Bill of Rights, the Act of Settlement, Habeas Corpus, the King James Bible, Halsbury's Laws of England, and Chalice Real Property. Chalice Real Property is very important to us because it is where you get fee simple from, which alienates your land from the Crown. If it's alienated from the Crown, the only way you can tax something is under the Crown. Well, how are you taxing if it's alienated from the Crown? Now they're saying that Landgate's saying, well, the Local Government Act gives them authority to take the land without even going to court. Because I've been to court half a dozen times, a little bit more, probably about a dozen times with them and beat them every time. But they decide to take my land. Unfortunately, I've got the original title issued under the Crown. They can't touch it. And under the laws of remitter, which is in Chalice Real Property, they can't touch it anyway while I've got the title. He who holds the original title holds the land. So if you've got a title to your land, got the rural identifier on it, sit on that title. There's no way around it. In the meantime, we're dealing with them. Now, to understand your governmental system, your federal government has the executive. The executive is the Governor-General, who selects 10 from the lower house, 8 from the upper. Under section 61 to 68 of our Constitution, that lists exactly what I just said, plus they hold all the portfolios. They are given to those 18 members by the Governor-General. He selects a legal practitioner of more than 5 years, but not a lawyer. I was going to say lawyer. Not a lawyer. Because a lawyer, under the King James Bible, Luke chapter 11, is not allowed to be anywhere in our government. And yet the government's full of them, like parasites. They never tell the truth, they know how to lie, they swear an oath to lie, and they swear their oath to the bar. That bar is not the British Accreditation Registry under the Crown, it's a British Accreditation Registry under the City of Inner London for Freemasonry. I don't know if there's any Freemasons here tonight. It's your religion, you can have it, you can do what you like, but it's unlawful for them to be here and do that. Now, the legislature, that is, at federal level, is the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives is there to represent you, but they're not. They're representing the political parties. So that's a fraud. Fraud is a maximum of law, it vitiates everything, wipes it out at inception. Then you got the judicature, which is your courts. Under section 72 of the Constitution, every single judge who sits in the federal court or in the High Court must be selected by the Governor-General from the executive. And they must swear the oath contained in the Constitution to the Queen of Great Britain and Ireland, not the Queen of Australia. That's a bush turkey. Has nothing to do with our country. A load of nonsense created out of corporate legislation, which they don't have the right to do. Now, when you look at 72, to go into the states, you've got basically the same, except you've got Legislative Assembly, Legislative Council, which is this. The executive is the governor of the state, and the 18 he selects. They put legislation together. Nobody else can put it together except for the executive of both state and federal. And if you see, this is our set. There is no local government. None. Doesn't exist. As what they got now. The municipal authorities, and people are going around on Facebook, YouTube, and every bit of media saying local government existed before federation. No, it didn't. Municipal authorities did. They were roads boards, and some big towns had municipal authorities. None of them got paid except the Shire clerk. And he's paid out of consolidated revenue. He was there to bring in contractors to contract the work. The reason I know that, because my father worked for them. I know exactly where they did. That's where we lived, just down the road from where Connie was brought up in Westonia for a while, because my dad cut all the roads around there. But there is no authority for them to have authority over your land. So how did the government fix that? They went to the Boundaries Act. That's your property boundary. And they created your property from imperial to metric. And created the inside boundary 2 millimetres inside yours. And said, that's ours, that's yours. We control that. More smoke, mirrors and lights comes out of it. Where did you put me in my book? Behind me. You've got this one, I thought the other day. Rag, sorry. New technology, you know. Bit of rag will do. Right, now, back to how they brought all this in. They created these councils, they give them a few more powers and a few more powers. Oh, you know, we've got to look after the environment, so we'll give you power over your land. Fee Simple said it's alienated from the Crown. The only authority is from the Crown. And they asked us 4 times, why did they ask us if they had authority? Now they're saying we had authority from Federation. Hey. Now what the Liberal member for Margaret Rivers running around saying now is that you've never owned your land. When Queen Victoria died, so did your titles. How you've got them, so did fee simple, and now the government owns the land. But he forgot. In February 1920, King George V put all Queen Victoria's letters patents back in place with a letters patent. Locked them all back in again. So just in case they wanted to take fee simple out, it got locked back in again. And they keep going on about how Landgate holds the title. Landgate's a company. How can they hold it? They can't. The second they set up a company that has an ABN, provides services for money, they're a trading company. That was ruled in HCA 11 of 2015 in the High Court of Australia. And it's fact. You look up section 51, subsection 20 of the Constitution, it says the federal government has the power to set up trading corporations, not ABN companies. That power belongs to the states, always has. You have a look at those referendums, they tried several times to remove that power. The whole idea is so they could set up trading companies, take over all your public utilities and give them to themselves. That put them in 20 companies in America. They first got Whitlam set up the Commonwealth of Australia Proprietary Limited, registered in the US Securities Exchange Commission. The registration number is 0000805157. Then under that they created the Commonwealth of Australia Trading Company. And under that trading company they set up 18 other companies. And that was all run by the cabal in the District of Columbia in America. That's what Trump's trying to knock out. Whether he does or not, I don't know what his motives are. Nobody can be really sure. If he knocks them out, good. If he doesn't, then we've got to eventually do it ourselves. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that I can't reveal to you, but we are doing heaps to knock these out. But back to your local government and the garbage. Now, is what they've been using since Federation is a particular part of the Constitution which they know, understand, and know how to use it to rip us off. And they've been doing it. It was first used by William Hughes, commonly known as Billy Hughes. 4'9" high, big mouth, stupid, and I would have loved to have been around so I could kick his head in, because he is the worst traitor ever put in this country. People don't realise the Labor Party was created in 1884 in England by the Fabian Society, came in here setting up nice unions that look after you. Now they're creating them into companies so you don't even get any of the money you paid in. So you've got to go and look at what they're actually doing. Get into your legislation. Most of your newspaper stuff is garbage. They're not going to tell you the truth. But what you've got to understand is this nice Labor Party. There was 8 members in the first Parliament. One of them was Billy Hughes. He decided in 1907, when he became the Prime Minister of Australia, that he could pass laws without going through the Governor-General, who has to put the laws together. So he just basically told them to sit there and shut up. He first created conscription. Now, conscription's unlawful because if you look at 61 to 68 of the Constitution, only the Governor-General controls the military. Royal Australian Army, Royal Australian Air Force, Royal Australian Navy. It's royal, belongs to the Crown. Overseen and run by the Governor. Nobody else. By the Governor. Governor-General at federal level, and he does it, sorry. Now, how can you introduce a law to conscript people into Her Majesty's Army? You can't. Is it in the Constitution? No. So you go to chapter 1, page 346. If an authority isn't granted to the Parliament, denied and remains with the people. Did he go to referendum? No. He thought he was above the law, so he put it in anyway. He also then changed the royal identifier to the kangaroo and emu. He did it. Then he introduced preferential voting. Then he, in 1908, put out a referendum to dispose of the statute of monopolies. So he could create a monopoly across this country, giving the government authority over every aspect of your life as a monopoly. That's why the statute of monopolies is in our Bill of Rights, and we have one, the imperial one. Because under Clause 8 of our Constitution, we are a self-governing colony of England. People say, I don't want to be part of England. Don't be a donkey. Look at the ramifications of taking the Crown out. That's the only outside force that can make our government do what it's told. Does it have authority? Yes. We have a case before the High Court of England. I have a notice of seizure, it's there. In fact, I'll let somebody pass it around. These have been served on the government on the 7th of January and served in the House of Lords on the 9th of February. It's a lawful seizure under Clause 61 of Magna Carta. Our right to charge our government with treason, fraud and whatever you like against what they're doing into the House of Lords.
I see on the 7th of January, not February.
7th of January filed a notice of seizure to Scott Morrison on his
Yeah.
private email, and then to his office email, and then by registered marks he got it. Then we served it to the House of Lords, to the Lord Speaker, Lord Fowler, and then to every member of the House of Lords, and got an answer back. They're looking at it. I've been sitting on it since then. You may think that's a bit strange to sitting on it that period of time, but it's not. They had to wait until after Brexit till they could do something about it. Now they can't. Now we're going to force them to. Because we've got to force them back under our Constitution. The reason I brought up Billy Hughes is because in 1919 he signed the Treaty of Versailles. Did he go to the people? The referendums are there. Answer, no, he didn't. Why didn't he? Who gave one stumpy little idiot the right to sign on behalf of all the people of this country? We did. Even the Governor-General doesn't have that authority. Now when Sir Edmund Barton, he was the first Prime Minister of this country, when he went into the Parliament just before Christmas in 1919 and propped the whole Parliament and said, I want answers to all these questions, and they're still in Hansard, never been answered. They closed the Parliament for Christmas and he mysteriously died of arsenic poisoning. How about that? Guess who done it? Not too hard to work it out. Anyway, we're not pointing at the murder, he's a typically good traitor to worry about that bit. Now you've got to worry about what took place after that. They just went ahead and said we're an independent nation after that. No, we're not. If you go to the High Court rulings in 2002, in the Marquette decision out of Western Australia into the High Court, Justice Michael Kirby said none of those outside agreements, the United Nations, anything has any value in this country till it goes to the people under 128 of the Constitution. Never did it, no value. No matter what they say. Now, one thing they've been using is section 51, subsection 38 of our Constitution for the 1900s shenanigans, the 1919, the Australia Act, signing a Uni-Droit Treaty. They use section 51, subsection 38 of the Constitution. Now, the problem with that is when they forced local government on us with number 88 of 1979 in this state, they threw in the towel. They really put the spanner in their works of their own authority because of this, royal prerogative. Now if you look up the Constitution, there's several places where it mentions it, but nobody knows what it means. Because most of the legislative authority exercised both federal level and state level, it states the laws must be reserved for the signature of the Crown, which is the royal prerogative to reject them. If they don't comply with our Constitution, the Governor or Governor-General at those two levels must get rid of those laws. You can't just say, we're going to have them because the government passed them. No, it doesn't work. Even some of those referendums, when you read them, I know they're unlawful because I know what the Constitution says. And you cannot change the Constitution. You've only given the power to alter. Alter is to correct a fault in the Constitution by referendum. You can't change, you can't add to it, you can't take away from it. That's our law, that's the supreme law of this country. And you've got to understand that. Now, without this, no law has been passed lawfully in this country. When did this get taken out? 1907. So since then, we don't have one single law in this country that's lawful. No decision of any court, no cop locking you up, no, I was there, I know what it is. They have no rights. There are no rights for the politicians or anybody until the Crown's put back and we go back under our Constitution and all those treasonous acts have been removed. I've argued this in front of a judge. He said, "Oh no, that's nonsense. How can someone have so much power?" That's what she's there for. Correct the problems. You've got to look at the whole system. When they introduced local government in 1979, every parliament was a Labor parliament. Usually the Labor Party introduces all this crap, but anyway, just hear me out. When they passed it, they negated the parliament. Why? Because on page 791 it says, neither the federal nor the state parliament sovereign bodies is simply legislated with limited authority. If they pass a law in excess of that authority, the law is a nullity and affords no obedience. You don't have to abide by it. That's why I ignore them getting so much trouble. But don't worry, you can too. All you've got to do is say, I'm not doing it. So they've developed a new system. You don't do it, they lock you up. Especially if you refuse to blow in their bag and say, because they hand it to you and say, blow in this, you're drunk, prove that you're sober. They don't say those words, but they mean it because you don't blow in it, you go for the high range drink driving, even if you've never drank in your life. Doesn't matter, you're still a drunk, because they said so. And that's what's wrong about the whole system. We have the lawful right to ignore it. We have the lawful right to look at decisions of the High Court, read our Constitution. That's wrong. Throw it out. Goodbye. Can't have it. Why? Because we're sovereign, we're supreme. Where do we get it from? Page 791, like I said, is our sovereignty. Page 676, the last paragraph says, the Parliament is not supreme and the very essence of federation is that must be so. The Parliament is like everybody else. They're subject to the law and they must abide by it. There's no excuses, no reasons. So if they commit treason against us, they're out the door. And back to local government. When they negated the Parliament, they knocked out themselves by the ruling they made. When they added it to the state constitution, which was a letters patent issued by Queen Victoria on the 29th of October 1900, they knocked out the state constitution. How? Go to HCA 48 in 1996, at paragraph 17. The High Court ruled the states are created under 107, 108 and 109 of our Constitution and draw their authority referentially from that Constitution. You add something to it, or you pass a law in excess of the authority granted by there, you knock your Parliament out. Now, it goes on, it says 106 allows at Federation the state constitutions to continue subject to our Constitution and altered in accordance with their Constitution. Not changed, altered. And these clowns say, we can change it, we can amend it, we can do this, we can do that. You can, but you're committing treason every time you do it. Now, a lovely little ex-Chief Justice, he's a favourite friend of mine, Watts, he decided we got a new constitution for Western Australia. It's made up of 5 acts. Doesn't matter that Queen Victoria put ours in place on the 29th of October 1900, and it's a letters patent. 6.1.9 of the statute of monopoly says they can't change it, only the monarch can, or remove it, and she didn't. So now they've got a big problem, because they've changed the state constitution by adding local government. You've seen the 3 tiers of the federal government, 3 tiers of the state. Where's the local government? The local government is your state parliaments. They're creating, and this is the Labor platform, and Bob Hawke started along with Whitlam, they want to remove all the states and replace them with 85 councils, just like the system in America where you've got all multiple states, multiple councils, but they can't do it. Now 106 says they can't change their constitution. Statute of monopoly says they can't. Wayne Martin reckons we've got 5 acts, which is the state constitution of Western Australia. One of them is the Supreme Court Act that never came into being until 1935, so obviously we didn't have a constitution until then. But then you go to HCA 39 in 1915, at paragraph 148. So Samuel Griffiths, one of the people who wrote the Constitution, said, here you find 106 points to the state constitution and all laws made pursuant to it, to the overriding authority of the Commonwealth Constitution. Then it says, it is beyond the legislative authority of any state to pass a law that overrides the Commonwealth law backed up by the Constitution. 15A of the Acts Interpretation Act says every single act passed by any parliament must comply with the Constitution. That's pretty clear. Chapter 1, page 346 says not all laws of the Parliament are valid, but laws passed pursuant to, in accordance with, and under the authority granted by the Constitution. And those laws only are binding on the courts, judges and people. All other laws are void. Constitution says, got to comply. Ruling of the High Court says it's got to comply. Federal law says it's got to comply. And local government doesn't comply. You quite often see on Facebook, oh yeah, the government's got, that's all state rights and it belongs to the state. No. The states are created under our Constitution. The state constitution continues subject to our Constitution. No power of change, no power to amend it. So, does local government have authority? No. Now comes the clangor, which has just popped up in County Court of Victoria. A guy put the fact that the councils have two bodies. They have the ABN, which has the executive or CEO, then the exec officers, and then it has the council. They're two different bodies. This one has an ABN, so it's a company. Who has authority over that company? State legislation. They're operating under the Corporations Act 2001. How can they do that? These CEOs are setting the rates to pay their wages, to run their company. These are supposed to be representing us. They asked by referendum, can they pay them directly? We said no. So who gave them authority to pay the councillors? We didn't. It's only been going on for about 8 or 9 years where they're paying the councillors. Why are they paying? It's a voluntary thing. These have got to be voted in by us. Who votes these clowns in? They're not voted in. They are put there by Australian Local Government Association through the Western Australian Local Government Association. Trouble is, their headquarters is in Auckland, New Zealand, in the office of the Chancery in Auckland, New Zealand. But don't worry, Clause 6 of the Constitution says New Zealand is part of New South Wales. It has a seat in both houses of the New South Wales Parliament. They sit for 1 week of the year there. They're under our Constitution like all of them, but that's the situation. Now, how do they get the right to send people back there? You can't send them back there. You don't need a passport to go there or come here. It's all lies. And people say, oh, it's got to be the government. Why don't you just go with the flow? Why don't you follow what they say? No, it's all lies. If you come from England to here, or from India or any of those places that are part of the British Empire, you don't immigrate. You emigrate. You have to stay, you can just move here, stay here 5 years and go into Parliament. So all this kicking everybody out of the Parliament was nothing but a load of lies and treason and fraud on those people. You immigrate here from a foreign country, like my wife has to immigrate. That's different. She gets naturalised as a British subject. We're all British subjects under our Constitution because we're still a self-governing colony. And people keep saying, oh no, all that finished at Federation. No. They say our Constitution doesn't have any clauses. That's a lie. There's 9 clauses attached to, I'll just short it up. There's 9 clauses. When it was put to us by referendum, they were put there by Queen Victoria. affect us. When it was accepted by referendum, that became our constitution. Who told them they could take the 9 clauses out? They took it out because they didn't want the Colonial Wars Validity Act in there, which puts all imperial law in this country subject to our constitution. They wanted to knock it out. They wanted you to just let them do whatever they like. Section 5, or clause 5, says every single imperial law must be complied with by the courts, the judges and the people of every state in this country. They just ignore it. Clause 7 is what you need to look at in relation to section 51, section 38, because this is what they've been using to try and destroy our system. That says with the conferral of the parliaments of the state, the Commonwealth can exercise authority it had at Federation. What authority did it have? Absolutely nothing. Why? Because of clause 7. It says on the proclamation of this constitution, the old entities known as the Australasian Council and the colonies ceased to exist. So we had 4 months and 25 days of imperial law, because on the 9th of July 1900 they ceased to exist. And Quick-and-Garran, which is that, states, but even if that wasn't so, there was only 7 legislative areas ever exercisable by the Australasian Council, and even less by the colonies, and all 7 contained in section 51 of the Constitution. Now all you people who think local government existed and authority existed over your land, either to tax it, rate it or anything else or control it, where is it in our Constitution? Where is it in section 51? Because they only had 7 legislative areas, never existed. In the forewords of your Constitution, it states that in Western Australia, Commissioner Cunningham was employed by the Governor to write out and issue certificates of title, but the Governor still had to sign. Why? Because land was never sold from the government to the people, either before Federation from the military governments, which were your colonies, or afterwards, nor was any authority given to them. Because simply, it transfers from the Crown to you. Who can do it? Only the Governor. Not the Governor-General, only the Governor of the States. You've got to understand the Governor of the state is the highest authority in government in each state. He has to put the legislation together if you want local government. He won't do it because he's not that stupid. Although Beasley might. Don't worry about him, he's an idiot. Anyway, at the end of the day, they can't propose any legislation